Okay, welcome to our 20th episode of Bridges of Belonging. My name's Andrea Carey. I'm the Chief Inclusion Officer with Inclusion Incorporated, and I'm so excited to welcome you today. I think our guests are here. We'll have to see if they pop up.
Here we are.
Hi. Sorry, Andrea. We were just finishing an episode of Fun with Flags with Sheldon Cooper and Amy Fair-Fowler. We thought we'd join you here today. Thanks very much for having us.
Amazing. Well, that's a good way to kick us off today. I love the outfit too, Todd. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional territory that I'm on today, which is the territory of the Coast Salish people, home to the Esquimalt, Songhees, and Wasanic nations out here in beautiful Victoria, where I've been so grateful to be safe and welcomed, especially during COVID. So we do have a really exciting session today for you, and so excited to welcome my two friends who have come with some comic relief, I see. I like to always begin with a bit of a reading. So we're going to read from The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown today. And I have two little pieces I'm going to read to you. So the first one, love. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. When we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. Love is not something we give or get. It's something that we nurture and grow. A connection that can only be cultivated when between two people, when it exists within each one of them. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged, healed, and rare. And the second piece, practicing love and belonging. To begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using the word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. And that's from Bell Hooks, another one of my favorite authors. So with that, I'm going to introduce our two incredible guests. And I am so thrilled to welcome them both from Ottawa, and you can see they're together. So this is our first time hosting a couple on the call and having two guests that are in the same place. So this is a bit of a milestone moment. So I'd like to welcome Todd Nicholson and Emily Glossop. Emily is the Executive Director of Abilities Centre Ottawa and a former member of the Canadian Para-Alpine ski team. Oh my goodness, I'm stumbling over these words this morning. Serving as a guide skier for one of Canada's top visually impaired skiers. She's since retired and is busy running the Ability Centre Ottawa, and we'll hear lots more about the incredible work that they're doing shortly. And Todd Nicholson spent 23 years as a player on the National Paralympic sledge hockey team, also retired from that, serving as captain for 15 years. Todd competed in 5 Winter Paralympic Games, including numerous World Championships and international tournaments. Todd is a former governing board member of the International Paralympic Committee and a chairperson of the Athletes Council for the IPC from 2010 to 2018. So welcome to both of our guests. I'm super excited to have you here. Which one of you, are you going to arm wrestle over who's going first to give us a bit of a deeper introduction to you?
I think she's going to go first.
I think I'd win the arm wrestle.
Yes, definitely. My shoulders are done.
So thank you so much, Andrea. And before we start, we also want to acknowledge we're here in Dunrobin, just in the city of Ottawa. And the city of Ottawa honors the people and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. So we are very grateful. So I guess I will start with my introduction. So Andrea already did a wonderful job. My name is Emily. I am a mom of 11-year-old twins. I am a wife to this guy right here, as you know. I'm a daughter to 2 amazing and supportive parents. I'm a friend, I'm a family member. I am a former member of the Canadian Para-Alpine Ski Team. I was a guide for one of Canada's top blind skiers. And I am a former recreation therapist. I worked for the last 20 years as a pediatric recreation therapist at the Ottawa Children's Treatment Centre, which is now part of CHEO, the hospital here in Ottawa for children. And I'm the executive director, presently the executive director of the Ability Centre Ottawa. So throughout today, I'm sure I'll be able to touch on a few of those things.
Awesome.
And
Todd.
thanks very much, Andrea. And I'm the husband of this lady here. You know, they always say when you get married, you have a book of encyclopedias, you might as well sell them, because the woman I married knows everything. So it works out really good. So yeah, my name is Todd Nicholson. I'm a 5-time Paralympic athlete. I've represented Canada on the international stage now for over 30 years in a number of different avenues. In sport, as an athlete, a coach, and I've also had the opportunity to do a lot of work on the administration side of Olympic and Paralympic Games. As you said in my introduction, I was the chair of the Athletes Council. Following the games in Vancouver in 2010, which were my last games as an athlete, I retired following those games and got elected to the Athletes Council. And that sort of took my athlete hat off to a certain extent, where I didn't have to train anymore, but put on the administration hat, where you had to be really involved and stay connected with the athletes as much as you possibly could, because you were now the Canadian rep for winter sports sort of thing, for all the 5 winters, for all the sports that were there. And then to move into the chair of the Athletes Council, which put me also on the International Olympic Committees, the governing board with the International Paralympic Committee, where I was the athlete representative for every athlete, for every sport, for every nation. And it really gave me an opportunity to really see the Paralympic movement and where it was to where it eventually ended up when I finished my role. You know, I went to my first games in Lillehammer in 1994, looked up into the stands, and it's a memorable moment that I'll have in my mind for the rest of my life. And I seen my parents sitting there, and these were 2 people that, following my accident in 1987, watched me play in a game that I didn't think I was ever going to be allowed to play anymore. It wasn't hard to find, because there were 2 of 6 people in the stands. To fast forward in Vancouver in 2010, when we had the opportunity to compete here at home, knew it was my last games, and again, looking up into the stands and seeing family and friends and half of the community in Kimburn, where I grew up, in the stands, and Emily and the kids at that time were only 10, 11 months old. So I've had the opportunity to do some pretty amazing things. Following through my career and everything like that, I can honestly tell you I wouldn't have been able to do this. My full-time paying job, I work for Canada Border Services Agency. So I work for the federal government. And one of the things that the federal government has that I think a lot of people don't realize is they have a program that includes leave for anybody who is representing their country internationally. That's as a coach, a referee, a judge, an athlete, Peace Corps, where you can take up to 66 days a year, paid leave, as long as you're representing their country. And I got into that shortly after once my career started, and the employers that I was working for in the past, I had to quit my job in order to go to the games. So the federal government for me was the avenue to go. And I've moved around into a couple different departments, but where I am now is absolutely one of the best places I've ever worked, and they support me in everything that I do, and still support me now following my athletic career. So that's a little bit about myself and who I am. Yeah, happy to talk a little bit further as to why we've stayed involved and why we're doing what we're doing. I think it'd be great for people to get an understanding of us and why we are so passionate about what we do, and also how we do what we do.
Yeah, no, thank you for those tremendous introductions. As I said earlier, you're two of my favorite people, and I just feel so blessed to know you and to see your work over the years, and to be able to now with Emily be a part of some pieces that we're looking at together. It's just so rich. And I mean, Todd, you and I sat around a board table for a few years when you were on the IPC and I was on the Canadian Paralympic Committee, and yeah, just two unbelievable humans. And the fact that you found each other and create even more little humans, it's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit, we will definitely dive into the space around sort of what you're doing with the Ability Center and your work and your passion. But I want to start with sort of a less light and engaging side and talk a little bit about times when you maybe didn't belong and how that played out in your journey.
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. So I do have to say that I was chatting with Andrea at the beginning, and this was challenging for me personally to go into this self-reflection and talk about belonging and think about when I belonged and when I didn't. And for me, I feel like a lot of my life, I fit in, whether it was belonged or just fit in. And so in most of the spaces in my world, so whether it was work, whether it was home, whether it was on the team, I did feel as though I fit in, but whether or not I truly belonged is a bit of a question mark in my mind. As I said in the introduction, and as you can see, I have competed, and I have worked, and I continue to do so. I continue to work in spaces that kind of overlap each other. And that alone has actually been challenging and has made me question my belonging. I am not a person with a disability. I have worked with individuals with disabilities for over 20 years. I have lived with a person with a disability for 13 years. But it might come as a bit of a shock, but actually competing as a guide on the national team was one of those places where I kind of questioned my belonging and I questioned my role on a very daily basis. As one of the few able-bodied athletes on the team, I tended to play a few different roles. I mean, my primary goal and my primary role, obviously, was as a guide to Kathleen. I assisted the coaches, though, on numerous occasions from time to time, schlepping gates up the hill and helping with setting. And to be honest, sometimes the joke around me and or maybe all guides is that I was just a piece of equipment. And so, yeah, I'm a piece of equipment, but I'm a piece of equipment that was absolutely necessary for making sure that my teammate, who I cared a lot about, made it down the hill safely while skiing as fast as she possibly could in order to get through the finish line with the fastest time. And so I took my role as a guide extremely seriously. I took my role as an athlete extremely seriously. And for some of you out there who don't have any experience with Paralympic skiing, especially alpine skiing, it is quite a fast sport. So even though these athletes are blind or have vision impairment, we are skiing down the hill at Kathleen and I were clocked at 118 kilometers an hour in one of our training runs. So it's not slow. This is really fast. There's lots going on, lots to be aware of at all times. So it's a role that I took very, very seriously. I also, however, knew that this was an opportunity of a lifetime. I got to travel all over the world. I got to meet amazing people, amazing humans.
Oh, thanks.
Like you. And I got to learn from everyone. I got to see amazing venues. I got to see accessible venues. I got to see venues that weren't so accessible. And we had to come up with creative solutions on how to make sure all of our athletes were going to be able to successfully get through their day. So this was an opportunity, and I really felt it was necessary that I needed to choose to not be comfortable all the time and to challenge myself, even, just because there was so much growth that could happen through those spaces of not being super comfortable or not feeling as though I truly belonged. So I should note too, none of this was done on my own. I've always it's all about a team, right? It's a team effort. I truly believed in everything that we as a team have done. I'm proud of the positions that I've held and the successes that we've had, and even if it was uncomfortable. And so it's just about making sure that you really go out there, challenge yourself. And I think that's why it's because of my experiences, whether it's my personal life or my professional life or my life as an athlete, and that sense of belonging or that sense of uncomfortableness that really pushed me to do the things that we do now in order to ensure that others feel comfortable and appreciated for everything that they do and everything they are. So.
Ooh, that's a beautiful little stage setting for where we're going to come back to in a moment. I also really appreciated that you brought up the difference between fitting in and belonging, Emily, because those are so crucial to these conversations. So with that, Todd, we're going to turn it over to you and hear a little bit about your story of not belonging.
I think for me, I'm going to go back a little bit further in terms of not belonging. So unlike some of the other speakers you've had, and I know I watched the last one where both the individuals were born with their disability. So for myself, I was not born with a disability. I acquired my disability as a T12 paraplegic at the age of 18 when I was on my way home from the high school prom, and I was involved in a car accident. So for me, the sense of belonging probably goes back even further when I was a kid. My parents, Carol and Stuart, grew, there was 4 boys in the family. We were on a farm. And in terms of belonging, we did what we could to try to fit into the community. We were city folks living out in the country, which Emily has tried to adapt to now. But I think for us, the sense of belonging as kids growing up in a community, in a small town community where everybody knew everybody, where there was organized sports and the ability to be able to do all of that. And my parents did everything they possibly could on a single income to ensure that we were part of that and we felt as though we belonged in the community. And we learned from a very young age that if you want to succeed or if you want your communities to succeed, you need to be willing to give back and feel as though, everybody is a large group. And, some of the things that we've been able to accomplish over time, it's because of the people we surrounded ourselves with. It's what sport has been able to do for both of us in terms of our sense of belonging and where we can go with our lives and what we can do. One door closes and it always seems to happen as though another one opens for us. So we're really fortunate in that way where we haven't had to really go look for anything. After my accident happened, I think one of the biggest things that sort of helped me with my feeling or belonging to a group or whatever, because when you come into a world full of people with disabilities, all playing sports. I remember the first time I went into hockey, and I went in with my youngest brother, Gordy. We went into the hockey dressing room, and the majority of guys were already out in the ice. So I was in the dressing room, and my brother and I left, and he was standing at the door as we were about to leave, and I was 18, so he would have only been 14 probably at the time. And he looked around the room and he said, "Todd, I think there's enough body parts in here. I can build another body." So, it was, for us, it was the comedy. We had to make it fun. We had to do that. And there's some great people out there that I've met throughout my time, like Patrick Jarvis, David Legg, Harvey Lord, Jean Labonte, Lou Mavahel, who really took a lot of young people under their wing to help us feel like we belonged. You know, when I finished competing in 2010, I wanted to consider myself as somebody who was a leader. I'd been the captain of the team for a number of years, but when I went to the administration world, it was very different. And to get put under mentors like Patrick Jarvis again, to help you feel as though you belonged and that you brought a purpose and you brought a value to what it is you were doing.
I love all the shout outs I always say to Patrick. I'm like, the rest of us are standing on the shoulders of those that went before us. And I think about a Bob Stedward and Patrick and David and Minister Qualtrough, and just the tremendous work that's been done to move the movement forward and to, really create some of the cultures that we seek and desire in sport.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that we need to try to realize is we can't forget about those people, those individuals,
Totally.
like the Gaetan Tardifs, who, Gaetan started out as a doctor for the team and chef de mission, and then he was the president of CPC. So, I think there's a lot of people out there that we need to hold on to that knowledge, so that when you do get new people into the realm and the organizations and the spectrum of what it is you're trying to accomplish here. There are some great people out there with amazing wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. So you spoke a little bit about sport as your place of belonging. So maybe continue on that thread a little bit, just in terms of, you talked a little bit about your intro to the sporting experience. How did you know that that was your place?
I think for me, I didn't know that was my place, because as a kid who grew up in a small town with a population of about 800 people, I had a dream since I was 4 years old to play in the NHL, but that wasn't going to happen. But then following my accident and meeting some of the athletes who inspired me to get involved, and because I had the advantage of participating in organized sport as a kid, when I became disabled and had to use different types of equipment in order to get into sport, I realized very quickly that I was good at a lot of the sports because I had the background knowledge in terms of grassroots programming, which a lot of people 30 years ago didn't have. Now we're hoping, we're getting a little bit better at that. So as we move forward, I think some of the things that we really need to focus on is how do we ensure that those people that, we don't want to call them the ambulance chasers, but for me, that's what it was. As a kid growing up, prior to my accident, I was a shy little kid. If I had to get up and public speak in front of a group of people, it felt like my head was going to explode. My ears would get really red.
Like your jacket?
Like my jacket.
Guys, I didn't know he was wearing this today. I took the dog for a walk, came back in preparation for this, and this is what he was wearing. So
she's changed 5 times today. I figured what's another change?
I clashed the first time as soon as I saw it.
So, but I think, some of the things that we look at and some of the things that we work towards when we're creating that organizational structure and bubble, as sports tend to evolve and we tend to get more and more athletes, it's the awareness. It's doing stuff like this so that people are aware of what is out there, what is possible. I can remember being at the rehab center following my accident, and the wheelchair basketball, the Ottawa Royals, which was a national wheelchair basketball team that played in the North American circuit, they were playing down in the basement. And that's how I got involved in sport. A guy by the name of Harvey Lord took me by the ear and said, "You're coming with me." And I was a young kid at the time. I was only 18 years old. I was active in sports before. And because of people like him, I went on to represent Canada in 6 sports throughout my career. So it's been quite amazing.
That's awesome. I want to move to the work you're doing now. And Emily, your reference around sort of how important your journey of not belonging has been to bringing cultures and spaces and places for people to show up in the ways they need to. So let's move over to you, Emily, and have that discussion.
Sure. Sure. So one thing that Todd didn't mention, and I hope you don't mind, but I come.
Encyclopedia. Remember that encyclopedia I sold?
No, I come from a different perspective. I come from a perspective of a healthcare worker. I come from a perspective of working with children and youth who are learning to be independent, learning new life skills. And there was a recognition, and you have said it before, that there's so much that you learn in sport, right? Sport is it's not just sport. Sport, there comes a social atmosphere. There's a family connected to it. There's life skill development. There's problem solving. I mean, you name it. In sport, you are presented with so many different challenges and barriers and potential for learning. And so I started to recognize the importance of bringing in our community into some of the programming that I was currently doing when I was working at the Ottawa Children's Treatment Center and CHEO in the recreation therapy department. And there's so much value, as Todd says, there's so much value in all of these mentors in our community. And I've learned a lot from them. And I hope to also be seen as a leader and a potential mentor for individuals in our community. Really what it came down to is in the work that we were doing, there was a recognition of barriers, there was a recognition of inaccessibility, there was a recognition of inequality. And I know that following Todd's retirement, we as a couple, we wanted to give back to our community. So we started out with this idea of a scholarship in Todd's name to support a local child or youth in our community to engage in sport and to access sport. And then there was also this dream that had started a number of years ago, a few years into working at the Ottawa Children's Treatment Center. I was getting to know our community. I was getting to know those who live within it. I was getting to know the programming in our community. And I went and visited Variety Village because actually I played wheelchair basketball too. So I was playing at a tournament at Variety Village and kind of saw this amazing, accessible, fully inclusive facility. And I just knew that that's what we needed in Ottawa. And I raced back to the office and went right to my boss's office and said, and we need a Variety Village in Ottawa. And at the beginning, she just kind of laughed and said, "Keep dreaming, Emily." So, that dream is still alive. And that's really where this all came from, is we took this scholarship in Todd's name in order to really look at, okay, what else can we do for this community? And it became just a much bigger project than we ever anticipated. And so we are really working on, we went to Variety Village, we've done a bunch of research. We were super fortunate to find out about the Ability Center in Whitby, Ontario. We went and visited the Ability Center only a few months after they opened. And it's fantastic. If you've ever had an opportunity to see the Ability Center or be there, in terms of the physical accessibility and the needs that are met within that building is quite unbelievable and just absolutely wonderful. It's really it's the right thing to do. So we actually started out, our project name was the We Project, and it stood for Welcomes Everyone. And that was our goal, is really to create a place where everyone felt welcome and where everyone felt as though they belonged. So I found that really interesting, Andrea, as I was kind of reflecting back. That's, originally what our name was. And so now we're really working on supporting our community by providing education and program and service delivery. We're really looking at trying to change the social fabric of our community and beyond, just a recognition that we need to build a community that is accessible and inclusive for all of our members.
How beautiful is that? Todd, I bet you have a lot to add to that. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
What was the question again? I was memorizing what she was saying. I'm like, what? We did all that? You know,
Actually
I think
just distracted by your suit, so.
No, I think for us, and to Emily's point, you know, we realize the power that sport can bring to a community, the power that sport can do for everybody. But we also realize that sport is not for everybody. There are four main pillars when we look at some of the things that we are focusing on. Sport is one of them, but there's also arts, culture, music, dance, life skills for somebody like in my situation who acquired an injury, or Canada's population is aging dramatically. And within a couple of years, we need to find a way to keep our seniors at home longer because there's not going to be enough senior homes. And look at what's happened recently, unfortunately, because of COVID and the amount of deaths that have happened in Canada. It's unfortunate that a lot of them have happened in our seniors facilities. You know, we had something very drastic happen to us here in Dunrobin a couple of years ago. And we both realized the power of what sport can do. So we created an opportunity with their opportunity and the Ottawa Senators and the Ability Center and a program called Rebuilding Our Community Through Sport. So for those that don't know, there was a massive tornado that Class 3 tornado that went through here and took out the majority of Dunrobin and a lot of areas in Ottawa as well. And through our connections and through some of the stuff that we've been able to do, we reached out to all of the national sport organizations and multiple sport organizations
and community sport organizations,
and asked for donations and asked for help. And it was unbelievable the response that we received. Basically, for any family that was affected by the tornado, free memberships for hockey for a full year. The local ski hills offered free rentals and free lift tickets. So again, the power for us, the power of sport, we seen was a way to bring the community back together. And that's something that, again, we're very passionate about, but there's also so many other things that we try to find that sense of belonging and where people can bring that all back together into creating that community awareness. And it doesn't just have to be local. You know, you're out in Vancouver, Victoria right now with the capability of social technology. All of the board meetings that I currently sit in are through social media platforms. And, you know, as administrators, as all the things that we're currently doing, we're trying to create that structure so that people can get back to living some sort of active lifestyle. And I think that's something that we all feel very passionate about.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. We started this conversation with you talking about kind of giving back to your community and how that creates a sense of community. And, you know, you've just listed a really powerful example about how you leveraged a situation in Ottawa to bring the sport community together to support those that were impacted. In that description, you didn't talk about that you were actually one of the families affected. And I remember sitting ironically in an airport lounge, because that's what we did, and reading Emily's post that your house was gone and just being so devastated, knowing what incredible humans you are and that this was, you know, just one of those unbelievable life events. And how are you going to navigate through what came next? So do you want to just walk us through that a little bit in terms of, like, when you think about belonging, and home is such a place of belonging, what did that mean for you in that journey?
I think for us, especially at the start of the whole rebuilding and everything that happened following the tornado, I think for us, we realized very quickly that family, friends, and health are probably the most important things. Yes, we lost almost everything in our house, but we very quickly realized that it was just stuff. We've been able to get some stuff back, a very small amount of stuff, but we've also got family and friends who knew what we had, and either through connections, through the Olympic committees, Paralympic committees, national sport organizations, have replaced some of that stuff for us that we would have never been able to see again. For me, the memory of that is very different than Emily's, because Emily had to run down the street to come across the house to see. We saw the tornado going over top of the car, or like over through the sky, but we were just driving to Dunrobin, so luckily we were together as a family. But then for her to take almost a year and a half off to rebuild what we're living in today. So I'll let Emily talk a little bit about some of that and where you feel.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And Andrea, as you said, home is really where that sense of belonging and that sense of comfort comes from, right? And for me, I'm actually still on a journey of trying to find belonging in this new home. It's a gorgeous home. I love it. We built this right here behind us. This is one of my big projects, was doing our fireplace, and it has so many wonderful memories because we have so many people who were involved in helping that happen. And that's just one of the projects that we had so many people. Sorry. But that day when I came across, like I ran down the street and found what I found, which was a home that didn't have a roof on it anymore. It didn't have three of our four walls. And it was fully destroyed. I mean, it was quite unbelievable, really. Every individual brick from the outside was shattered on the driveway. And in an instant, the only thing I cared about was making sure that our kids felt safe, and that they felt that they belonged somewhere. Sorry. Oh my gosh, that was really awful. But
take your time.
Within literally minutes of me turning away from the home, I was the last one escorted out of our community by, luckily, one of our wonderful friends who is also a firefighter. And the funny story is, I came back, I was like, is there any way you can get my backpack? Because my backpack had my two computers, my work computer and my personal computer, with everything ACO, Ability Center Ottawa, related on it. So I was trying to get that, and they're like, you're not allowed in. So they went in to try and see if they could find my backpack. They found a backpack, only one computer in it. The other one was found days later, completely destroyed. However, they also found our goldfish, who was still living inside. He's swimming around in his little bowl with pink insulation and blue paint chips. So he hands me this goldfish. So I am presently walking down the street in full disaster around me everywhere. I have my backpack on my back now, and I'm holding the goldfish. And I'm thinking, where do I go? Like, what do I do? I didn't know how I was going to get back to Todd and the kids, who I had jumped out of the truck and started running. So I don't know where they were. And I look down the road, and there's this barricade of firefighters. And behind the barricade of firefighters are three of our very good friends, the Rileys, who fought through everything. All the roadblocks to get to our neighborhood. And they took us in. And so really what it comes down to is it's the people that are around you who really help to create that sense of comfort and that sense of belonging. And we moved numerous times over the last 22 months before coming back here. We moved 5 times. And every single one of those places, we found a new sense of belonging. And it was usually because of the people who were around us, and the joy that they brought to our lives, and the experiences, the amazing experiences that we had in each of those individual places. So yeah, it's a journey, and I'm still trying to be comfortable in this new home of ours. I know it'll come, but it's really, it's the people around you. It's just the wonderful, wonderful humans around you.
Yeah, and that, and just, you know, trying to rebuild a home in the middle of a pandemic, wouldn't suggest that to anybody. One, prices went ridiculous, and two, just to get anybody in to do anything. So that's where, as Emily says, we took on a lot of the projects ourselves since moving back. When we moved back in March, the house wasn't done. But at that point in time, we were 4 people living in a 400 square foot apartment.
One bedroom.
It was great. Our in-laws were upstairs.
Love you, Mom and Dad, if you're watching.
And but you know, when the tornado hit and everything, and we started making some phone calls, it was like an episode of Dumb and Dumber. I was talking to my brother Jason and his wife Jolene, who also lost their home in the same tornado. So literally, it took out their home, lifted, and landed in our backyard, which is about 10 miles away. And I just kept saying, "We're okay, everything's all right, other than the home, my home's gone." And he says, "No, we're okay, everybody's okay, but our home's gone." And it wasn't until about 5 or 6 of those back and forth so we realized, are you kidding me? Like,
We both lost.
you've
our
also
house.
lost everything. So they are still rebuilding. And so, you know, there's lots of people in the community that have been able to recoup and regenerate and come back to home. But just last night, the winds here were horrendous.
Can you see the bags? Didn't sleep very well.
So anytime any of that stuff comes up around the house here, it still brings back memories.
Well, and I know that you did have an incident earlier this year where your trampoline actually got moved by another wind incident. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to fix the neighbor's fence again.
Yeah. Terrible.
yeah, no, that's it continues to I'm sure kind of haunt you and stay with you and re-traumatize you when those types of things happen.
But luckily, I got my suit back.
Well, I was actually just going to say that, Todd. So tell us the story about how the suit survived the tornado along with the fish.
Well, the suit actually didn't survive. So for those on the call or that are watching and don't know the story behind the suit, is I was the chef de mission for our Canadian team in Pyeongchang in 2018. And one of the things for me that I always remember out of all the games that I've been to, I always remembered the chef de mission. We had Ozzy Swirsky, who dressed up as Captain Canada, Patrick Jarvis, who we stole every piece of his clothing when he was chef. So I always wanted to, if I took on the role of chef de mission, I wanted the athletes to remember who I was. Well, if you can't remember this. So what ended up happening was the first night that we won a medal, I wore the suit to the medal ceremony. So I promised all the athletes that anytime we win a medal, I will wear the suit. Well, didn't we come home with the best number of medals ever? And I had to wear the suit every night of the games for medal ceremony. So it does wash really nice. It got washed after every night. But I remember at Canada House, there was a number of different outfits that I wore with this. And I can honestly tell you that the chef de mission for me, of all the things that I've done in sport, it's still one that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Which is why when the owner of the company that found out about our story about us losing everything replaced this one for me. And I'll tell you, when it showed up, the kids and Emily both sort of, oh, seriously?
We don't need
kind
that.
of hoping that got blown away somewhere. But anyways, it's a great memory for me.
Absolutely. The one thing Emily was hoping that she didn't have to see again.
That wasn't on the list of 11 things to try to find.
That was not, no.
Oh my gosh. I look at that joy sign between your two heads on the mantle on the fireplace that you two built. And, you know, you both just radiate such an incredible presence in everything that you do and all the gifts that you bring to this world. And that just seems like such a perfect photo. I really hope that that's your family photo this year of beautiful children sitting on your lap with the joy sign behind you, because it just is such a keystone to who you both are. So thank you for sharing that very vulnerable story. I know that wasn't easy for you, but We've had some really supportive comments in the chat box, and I know that you've touched each person that's on this call today and how you show up and navigate some extremely challenging life circumstances. I want to talk about how you use that to drive change forward, because you are both change makers and you do such tremendous work in everything that you do. We've talked a little bit about Ability Center Ottawa, and Todd, you're on the board of the Own the Podium, and you're both just continually giving back to your community, as we said earlier. So what drives you to do that, and how does that show up, and what's next for Ability Center Ottawa?
I think for me, it's that in every one of these experiences or situations that we have lived, there's so much learning that happens. So yes, I was very fortunate to have an extremely supportive employer. When we realized that there was a need for one of us, there was just a recognition that insurance wasn't going to be enough for us, and one of us was going to have to take a more active role in the rebuild of our home. And for me personally, there were some challenges. We won't get into them, but there were some challenges with regards to the accessibility in our home. We had an accessible home to begin with. That's what we bought. It was our forever home. And there were some things that happened that were going to create major challenges ensuring that this house was accessible for Todd. And
Why?
that drove
This disability thing again.
That drove me into a whole new realm of education, really. Looking at accessible design, looking at codes and standards, and looking at construction through a new lens, and actually working with a lot of our contractors who had never built an accessible home. And well, what does that mean? And then working with some of our local businesses. So we have Build Able, who really were my go-to people. I've never built an accessible home. And so they would help guide us and consult with us around things. And so I learned a lot about accessibility in a home. And the joke is that, well, this is just the test run, right? This is just a test run for building a 125,000 square foot building and building the Ability Center here in Ottawa. So really, I guess in all of my things, I just try and take the opportunities and I try and see where the learning can come from, and then try and share that too. So in all of those conversations with contractors, it wasn't just we're working together to build my kitchen and Todd's kitchen. We're actually working together so that you have an idea of what an accessible kitchen could look like, or what are the needs that you would want to take into consideration when you're looking at an accessible build.
And yes, I was the chef de mission in 2018, but I do not cook. So why to this day she still built an accessible kitchen, I don't know.
You love it. You love it. Really, so that's what it's all about for me, is just taking the opportunities that come out of potentially challenging times and turning them into what comes next. And yeah.
I think for me, again, I learned at a very young age. As I said earlier, ever since my parents got us involved in the community and felt as though we needed to give back. Throughout my career, when I was working at Hydro and different places that I worked a compressed work week, and I did a lot of motivational talks at schools, and people would always ask, why do you do that? What do you get out of that? And for me, whether I was speaking to 10 kids or adults, or whether I was speaking to 2,000, 3,000, if I made a difference for one person in the room, then I did what I wanted to do. I accomplished my goal. And I think going into everything that I do, and I'm pretty sure Emily's the same, a lot of the stuff and the reason why we get behind a lot of the things that we're doing, we are not the difference makers. I think what we are is we are the connectors to help. And we're probably a select few who feel as though everybody can work together. It's like, get everybody out of your silos, start working together, share best practices. Andrea, as you said, with On the Podium, one of the things that I found we've been able to help create there is definitely a cost savings, but more importantly, I think we're having more of the national sport organizations and multiple sport organizations working through a common denominator and sharing best practices. So yes, we support our podium potential athletes, but in supporting those athletes, we're also supporting all of the grassroots programming in that as well, because they're also gaining the knowledge and the experience and the research that has gone into supporting those high level athletes. One of the biggest things I think that we look at and try to get into is here in Canada, when we look at sport, do we have the best athletes in Canada competing for Canada right now? I say no. I think we have the athletes whose families can afford to keep them in sport. So what can we do in order to ensure that we keep those kids active in sports, create that stream so that, you know, the ones that possibly can afford it will someday maybe make it to the podium. But I think it all comes down to, again, surrounding yourself with the right people. At a very young age, and I remember lying in my hospital bed, and when my accident happened, looking up at my parents and said, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And they were very quick to come back and say, we don't know how, and we don't know what, but you'll do something. And we'll surround ourselves with the right people to make sure it happens. And I can honestly tell you, throughout my whole career, both on the athlete side and on the administration side, I've always had to do that and was never afraid to put my hand up and ask for help, or put a call out and say, here's what I need. Who's willing to jump on board? And, you know, some of the stuff that you're doing, Andrea, and the people that you've had on your panel so far, and the people that are watching, you know, I challenge them to do the same. Look outside your box of what you typically do and find something you're passionate about and be willing to donate the time to it. I'm still working on my grade 9 volunteer hours. I've almost got enough, but you know, we're getting there. We're getting there. And I think that's the thing is a lot of people, yes, they do things for financial reasons, but Emily and I think, are very passionate about doing things because we have been very fortunate in what we've been able to do because of other people's resources, whether it's building a house, a home.
We've been so well supported in so many different ways. And I would like to take this opportunity, Andrea, if you don't mind, because I don't know who is watching today, but a part of the reason this is so hard for me and this self-reflection is because I respect so many of the people working in this space and so many of your former speakers and you, Andrea. I just feel so grateful to be amongst such a wonderful group of teammates. And I call you all teammates. I hope you see me as a teammate. And I thank you. And to all of those individuals out there who helped us build this beautiful home and helped support us through that whole experience. I just, huge sense of gratitude towards each and every one of you.
Thanks, Emily. And I think anyone that is fortunate enough to have either or both of you in their lives, you are both the gift. So they should also feel intense gratitude, as I do. So we're getting towards the end of our time. So I just want to kind of walk through, you know, we talked a little bit about sort of Ability Center and where it's at now and how you've gotten there. We've talked about your home. Tell me a little bit about, like, what is your vision for this world and for this work, and how do we do this together? You talked about that togetherness and the opportunity to break down silos, and I am totally in, as you both know, and also contribute a ton of my volunteer time to this space because I believe so deeply in the power of sport and the need for us to ensure that those that haven't had the opportunities get the opportunities and that they feel like they belong when they have those opportunities. So, you know, how do we instill that belonging? How do we get folks involved that haven't had the opportunities? Where do we go with that?
Do you want to jump on that? So I really feel as though this takes investment and it takes intention, and we really do have to reach out and, as Todd said, surround ourselves. You know, Andrea, we live miles and miles away, but we are connecting in so many different ways and so many different platforms. And I think that's what it's going to take. And I actually, COVID has created some extremely massive challenges and has created barriers, and it's actually opened our eyes to a number of things in our world. But the other thing that it has done is it has kind of increased this need for supporting each other through this experience. And through that, we also recognize, well, if we can support each other this way, then let's start having more conversations, and let's start creating some more alignment, and look at where those connections are and where they should be. And if they're not there, then how do we actually engage those individuals into that kind of conversation and ensure that everyone who should be at the table is at the table having those kind of conversations and getting engaged. I think the most important piece too is that it's that whole nothing without us. So really engaging the community that we're working with and working for, and involving them in the conversation to see what it is that they need. And so one of the projects that the Ability Center is working on right now, we're working in collaboration with the Ottawa Sport Council, is this whole return to play. And we've taken a lead on really looking at how to support sporting organizations who support individuals with disabilities. And what are the barriers? What are the challenges? And then try and come at it from a solution-based approach. So really looking at coming at it with solutions before they even ask the questions, or reaching out. So working with Ottawa Public Health right now to look at possible recommendations and bringing forward some of the challenges that they may not see. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't see what you don't see. And so really it's about ensuring that there is some awareness around the barriers, around the challenges, and then working together to create solutions to ensure equal and equitable access for all.
And so Emily talked a little bit about doing that locally here in Ottawa. I think with today's platform, one of the biggest things that we can do with Zoom, with MS Teams, with the other types of technology that are out there is create that national program so that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that on the podium and the staff and the task force that they created there to create a national program that people could pull from, whatever would suit their needs.
And we have been, and this is happening. This is happening. He's not at that table, but and we don't talk at night, so clearly. So
We haven't invited him yet. If he wears the suit, we might invite him.
those are conversations that are started, and I just hope we can like really hold on to this momentum and keep it going, keep that conversation going, realizing the value that each individual organization has and the capacities and the resources that they have in order to support as we're doing. Like we have some of that on the podium documentation as part of our return to play roadmap. And we know that they have the resources. We also know that some of our grassroots programming, fully run by volunteers, don't have the capacity or the resources to even look at that. So where can we benefit? And there's mutual benefit everywhere. So it's just seeking that out.
And I think to go back a little bit, just in terms of, you know, when we look at those silos, how do we bring down the silos to ensure that whatever it is you feel like you're trying to belong with, or a sense of belonging, how do we ensure that those silos are brought down so that the best practices that are happening here are also happening over there? And we're trying to create, not us personally, but we're trying to make those connections like you are and like a lot of other people are. So how do we make sure that all of that
gets
harnessed somewhere for people in order to be able to find it and share it?
Yeah.
Because I think there are a lot more people out there like us who are not in it for themselves and who don't want to harness this and say, no, I created this, I did this, I'm not willing to share it, it's going to cost you money. Well, no, it's free. There's ways for us in order to be able to create this synergy across the country, and ultimately internationally so that everybody can benefit from it. Because I think, especially in wearing my international hat, some of the places that I've been don't have the structure that we have here in Canada or some of the developed countries. So how can we ensure that if you're looking at sport, the number one athlete that's sitting on top of the podium had the same access and the same information and resources as the athlete who's coming from a developing country who, if you're in track and field, may have kicked your ass if they would have had access to the same stuff that you did. So, to me, it's all about fairness.
Fairness and equity.
Mhm.
And that's a great note to wrap us up on. I am just so grateful to both of you for saying yes today and to being in my life, period. Emily and I are kind of Zoom besties these days. I feel like we seem to be on a lot of things together, which has been one of the gifts of COVID. And so, yeah, it's just a real fantastic opportunity for us to be able to share with our audience your stories and your journeys, and to hear how resilient and just incredibly invested you are in giving back and creating a better world. So thank you to both of you for being here, and thank you for the incredible work you continue to do. And please continue to live with joy.
Thanks very much,
Thank
Andrea.
you,
And I'm
Andrea.
usually in the background because I work on, and that's probably been the biggest challenge, is we now work together as well as live together. So she says we don't talk, but I think she just doesn't listen.
Totally. I'm just going to pop up our next guest, which is on January 12th. We have Senator Chantal Petitclerc joining us, and another guest to be announced shortly. And so I welcome folks to come back and join us for that conversation. And this Sunday, the 20th of December, we are having our first ever Day of Belonging. So hashtag Day of Belonging. We're going to be sharing some of the Bridges of Belonging stories over the last 20 episodes, as well as inviting each of you to share your belonging story. So please join us on social media platforms for that day as well. Take care, everyone. Have an amazing day. Stay safe and well, and happy holidays, whatever that might be for you.